Welcome to today's webcast, Rising Dough, How EATClub is Using Analytics to Grow Their Business, brought to you by VentureBeat and Looker. I'm Wendy Schuchert. I'm one of the editors and analysts at VentureBeat, and I'll be your moderator today. We have just a few announcements before we begin. First of all, this webcast contains audience polling. The polling question will appear in the slide presentation window. Just complete the poll when they appear and click on the Submit Answer button located in the polling slide window. Thanks in advance for your participation. You can also participate in the Q&A session by asking questions at any time during this webcast. Just type your question into the Ask a Question text area below the video window and then click the Submit button. At this time, we recommend that you disable your pop-up blockers. Now, the slides are going to advance automatically throughout the event. You may also download a copy of the slides by clicking on the Download Slide button located below the presentation window. And I also want to assure our audience that we will be making this available on demand after the event, too, so you can download a copy of the webinar as well. If you are experiencing any technical problems, please visit our help guide by clicking on the help link below the media player. In addition, you can contact our technical support helpline, which is also located in the webcast help guide. And now on to the presentation, Rising Dough, How EATClub is Using Analytics to Grow Their Business. Discussing today's topic is Alex Levy. He's the Business Intelligence Manager at EATClub. In this role, he has defined and measured key metrics that have enabled nimble decision-making and rapid growth. Prior to EATClub, Alex worked as a management consultant at Accenture, focusing on strategy and analytics for consumer goods and pharmaceutical clients. We also have Joshua Moskovitz. He is the front-end analyst team leader at Looker. He's a graduate of Cornell University, and he has worked in various roles across analytics, product management, and user acquisition. Josh is the lead for Looker's front-end analyst team, helping to demonstrate the power of the tool to new users. Welcome, Alex and Josh.
How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Really good.
Awesome. So now I'm going to open up the webinar. I want to find out a little bit more about our audience and what they're doing currently with analytics and forecasting. So audience, at this time, you should be able to pick an option for the poll here, and you can select more than one. So what type of forecasting tools are you currently using for your organization? I enjoy the various questions here offered. Sorry about that. We had a little bit of technical problem here. Go ahead and click on your answer. Now, Josh, given your extreme understanding of the analytics arena, do you have any ideas or guesses as to how our audience is going to be picking here?
Yeah, good question. I really would say it depends on the size and the where the customer is in their life cycle. So depending on where the company is, we've seen earlier stage companies do a combination of guesswork and maybe some Excel-based forecasting. Whereas if you look at some larger organizations, depending on the resources they have within the company, they might be using advanced different packages or different software to help with that forecasting. So we've seen a combination of both, at least in my experience.
Excellent. And Alex, what do you think? If you had to be a betting man, what would you, having looked at, I have to tell you, I took a peek at our attendees list, and we have a pretty wide spread of organizations represented. So given that understanding, what do you think is going to be the number one answer for our audience?
I'm going to have to go ahead and guess spreadsheets. I think, I'll talk a little bit more about our kind of evolution in forecasting and where we've been and where we've come. But I think that's kind of where we started. So I'd expect that, a high proportion of people are at that point in the forecasting journey.
Well, Alex, I think you are right on the money, and you are correct. Spreadsheets are the number one answer for our audience. Now, I'm pleased to see that 0% of our audience, we had 67% of our audience voting who are live with us here in the webinar, 0% said forecasting is not important to our business. So thank you for that, audience. I'm glad to have you here. And second place, business intelligence tools. I'm curious. I'd be curious to find out what some of those business intelligence tools are. And guesswork is a third. So does that surprise you, Josh?
Not too much.
Well, we'll have more questions for our more poll questions for our audience. Oh, by the way, we had an other, please answer in the Q&A box. We did have some write-ins from our audience. Thank you so much. So Robert said he has a custom POS system that manages stock purchasing. Thank you for that. And Russia said Stata, which I'm not familiar with, but we will hopefully talk about that a little bit more in the Q&A section. So thank you, Robert and Russia, for chiming in on that. Now, Alex, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you to start our presentation.
Thanks so much, Wendy, and thanks for having me here. Would love to tell you guys a little bit more about EATClub to give some context about who we are, and then I'll dive into a little bit how we're using both data and Looker to kind of make our business better. So a little bit about EATClub to begin. First off, we are a corporate lunch delivery service. We're kind of giving that Google cafeteria experience to sub-cafeteria scale companies. And with that in mind, we've delivered more than 2 million meals to over 2,000 companies in the Bay Area and LA since we were founded in 2010. We offer a personalized menu, a daily rotating menu of 15 dishes. And that selection is made up of about 50% dishes designed by our award-winning chefs and 50% provided by restaurant partners. The other thing that we do is that we in-source delivery operations. So all of our meals are delivered within a 1-hour window. And we're very efficient at this. We do this at a 99.4% on-time rate. And we're delivering, during our delivery window, we're delivering over 100 meals per minute. So we've come a long way with logistics, and we feel that that's one of our biggest strengths. So as you can imagine, with some of those challenges that I mentioned, we have in-source logistics, we have a daily rotating menu of 15 items. We source food from both restaurants, and we also have a production component as well. That requires a lot of data. And we feel that data is really one of our main secret sauces. It's one of the things that kind of differentiates us from some of our competitors. And Looker is really the way that we have access to that data at our fingertips. And it's really not an exaggeration to say that all departments at EATClub use Looker. So I could go through all of them, but just to give a couple of examples, our operations team uses it to measure its metrics in a real-time way. So things like that 99.4% on-time delivery rate. Our account management team uses it to track, our key accounts, their order behavior, their feedback through reviews. So really, every department is using it. I want to dive a little bit more into the use case of forecasting in particular, because I think that's where we've made a lot of progress. So to kind of set the table here a little bit and discuss what our challenges are, we have this daily rotating menu, as I mentioned, and customers can order up to a week in advance, but as late as 10 a.m. the day of delivery. As you can imagine, we need to give our restaurant partners and our production kitchens orders well in advance of that order cutoff. So 1 week prior, we're giving volume estimates. A day ahead, we're giving pre-orders that are constrained by 20%. At 9 a.m. the day of, we're giving final orders. All the while, customer orders are streaming in, and we need to really make a prediction about what demand will be overall, as well as how that demand will be allocated among our menu items. So that kind of gives you an idea of the challenge that we're facing from a forecasting perspective. And prior to Looker, it's interesting that everyone said spreadsheets because that's kind of what we were doing as well. We were doing some combination of detailed analysis in spreadsheets, our best educated guess, and frankly some wild speculation. Basically, we were piecing it together the best that we could. After implementing Looker, we saw massive improvements because we really were able to put in kind of a robust forecasting process sorry, I'm not sure why. Okay, sorry, we're having some technical difficulties with the slides. So we were able to put in a robust forecasting process that kind of used data pulled out of Looker as an input. Really, what we're using Looker for is essentially looking at a point in time and seeing what customer orders look like after that given point in time, and then using that historical volume data as an input into a proprietary algorithm that we implemented that uses user behavior and order patterns to allocate the demand. And then we have this planning team that adjusts the forecast as needed, provides that human input for one-time factors, and really basically adjust for new trials, adjust for seasonal factors, and based on this kind of robust process that we put in place, we were able to see a greater than 50% improvement in forecasting accuracy. So I want to dive a little bit deeper and actually talk about some of the insights that we were able to derive, because that is kind of how we were able to continuously improve the process. We implemented this robust process up front, and we've just been continuously improving since then. So the first insight that we found, we kind of have this beautifully regular pattern of customer orders that we see. We see these big spikes in demand on Mondays. Our users are kind of ordering at work, so they tend to log on Mondays, order for the entire week, and we see orders kind of trail off after that. And you see kind of the big dips are on weekends. People aren't necessarily thinking about their lunch at work over the weekend. And so, if you're predicting these massive spikes on Monday, if you know that they're coming, you can be ready for them. You can anticipate them and have the inventory ready so that you don't get in trouble when you see these big spikes. The other thing that we were able to look at is inventory management and forecasting around promotions. We really realized that we were able to drive large volumes of orders and volumes of traffic to our menu if we promoted an exciting item. So you kind of see that 1 hour after the promotional email goes out, there's a large flood of orders to the menu. But what we also found is that kind of spike is not sustained. So we were able to better understand what kind of the cadence of that large flood of orders would look like, be ready for that, and also know that we can't expect that flood of demand to continue. This is a really interesting one. We learned that vegetarians, our vegetarian users, tend to order earlier than their eating counterparts. So initially we kind of we saw these large initial spikes in vegetarian orders for vegetarian dishes, and as a result, we tended to over-forecast vegetarian dishes because we saw this initial spike in orders and demand, and we kind of anticipated that would continue when it didn't. And the theory that we have for why this pattern exists is that since vegetarians tend to have this specific restriction that limits the amount of items that they can pick from on a menu, they want to get there early to make sure that whatever they're interested in, among that more limited set is available. Whereas if you don't have a dietary restriction, it might be more viable to kind of come in at the last minute and order whatever dish is available. So by better understanding this pattern, we were really able to more easily forecast vegetarian items, be ready for that kind of divot in demand that we see after the initial spike. So I want to talk a little bit about cannibalization, but don't worry, definitely not talking about eating people. I want to talk more about a concept that those of you who are in retail will be familiar with, but it's the idea of offering two similar items, and those two items, because they're perceived as similar, will eat into each other's share. So take the example I have here with Thai curry versus Indian curry. Separately, they might have a certain volume, but if they're featured together, the volume that each of them will garner is actually significantly less. What was really interesting about this, I think everyone many people are aware of the concept of cannibalization among an offering. But what was interesting was to see, which dishes are really perceived as similar by our users and which ones are not. So Thai and Indian curry, probably pretty straightforward, similar type of dish, even though they're different cuisines, they're perceived as very similar. But something like salads versus lunch boxes, which you can see has a heavy degree of cannibalization there, it might not be as intuitive. Salads, we serve these big salads with lots of ingredients. Lunch boxes, they were kind of a light lunch with some small components. But they really both filled the need or the niche of something healthy on the menu. And they were kind of perceived as similar for the type of lunch that they are, essentially. So it was interesting to see which items cannibalized each other and what impact that had on our forecasting. And then, you look at things like sandwiches and burritos and certainly teriyaki and fried rice, and their volume doesn't have any impact on each other. So, we were able to kind of pull together all of these insights and really improve our forecasting process. We improved our accuracy by over 50% because we had the data available to conduct these analyses and continually iterate on what we were doing. The second area that I want to dive a little bit deeper into is menu optimization. So, as I mentioned, we offer a daily rotating menu of choices to our users. Currently, that's around 15 items, and our users are seeing that, many of them every day. So we really had to optimize this for the best possible customer experience, and we had to consider a number of factors to do this. The cuisine balance of what's on the menu, the ingredient balance. So, for example, protein, what composition or breakdown of proteins do you have on the menu? Menu rotation, both day over day and week over week. The size of the menu. So, what is the right number of items on a menu to optimize for customer choice? Placement of items. These are issues that I think many people in the restaurant or food business will be aware of. But we were really able to kind of test different hypotheses on this, look at what menu structure really worked the best. And to kind of cut to the punchline here a little bit, our efforts resulted in a 10% increase in menu conversion. For those of you familiar with kind of e-commerce metrics, that's pretty significant. And I want to dive in a little bit more as to what we were actually testing and what we were using to improve our menu. So we used a variety of data inputs to help us do this. These are all looker queries that we used. And the data sources are kind of our order history. So we have extensive data about, volume of orders. We also used our user reviews. So that's a channel of direct feedback that we have from our users. We have dietary preferences. So when our users sign up for our service, they declare any dietary restrictions or preferences that they have, such as vegetarian, vegan, paleo. And it's interesting to see, as an aside, it's interesting to see how those preferences kind of are consistent with or vary from their actual behavior. And then we have user activity, so things like interactions with the menu, menu views, clicks, things like that. So these were kind of all the data inputs that we used to run these tests. And one of the main things that we looked at was cuisine repeat rate. So we wanted to figure out which dishes could be featured more frequently. And what we found is that dishes and cuisines that are considered, more comfort food or less exotic, people were willing to go back to much more frequently, whereas cuisines that maybe were seen as more exotic or more niche, they had a lower repeat rate. And so what we really kind of structured our menu around was the idea of having staples, food that's comfortable and familiar that can be rotated less frequently, and then food that's a little bit more exotic that fills kind of an excitement role on the menu, and that needs to be rotated more frequently to give that, to keep that excitement going. The other thing that we tested specifically is different sequences of the menu. So the way that you order the items on a menu actually has a big impact on the way that both customers view the menu, the purchases and selections that they make, and then their menu conversion overall. So we tested a number of things here. We tested, should highest quality or highest reviewed things be up at the top? Should the staples be towards the bottom? Where should new items be placed on the menu? And what we found is, I think new items are kind of a different thing. You always want those on top because, they drive the most excitement. But then we kind of found that ordering by quality actually has a big impact on perception of the menu as a whole. Because as you're scrolling through, if you see the highest quality items up at the top, you'll be much more likely to kind of perceive the entire menu as high quality. You kind of make your effective assessment pretty early on in your viewing of a menu, and you kind of go from there. The other thing that we found is organization is really important. So the way that people actually view the menu and look through different items, it needs to make sense to them pretty quickly and intuitively. So, we derived a number of insights around this, and this has helped us kind of create some rules around the way we structure a menu. And as I mentioned, all of these efforts, because we kind of had the data at our fingertips and we were able to run these tests, we increased menu conversion by 10%, and we're continually iterating. We're trying to make our menu better. We want to have that best customer experience and the best experience of variety for the customer. So we're continuing to work on this, but we're really happy and excited about what we've achieved so far. And just to wrap up here, we've also kind of had some fun with the data that we have. So we ran this analysis on bacon for International Bacon Week. To see, how do our customers interact with bacon? How do they order it on the menu? Is it different than any other ingredient? And we found some really fun stuff. People are 3 times more likely to order a dish with bacon in it than one without. Men are 1.6 times more likely than women to order a dish with bacon in it. People's self-control atrophies throughout the week, so they're much more likely to order a dish with bacon in it on Thursday or Friday than early in the week. So some really fun stuff there. And what was really cool about this for us was that this was featured in the Huffington Post. So it really showed kind of the applicability of our data more broadly to a wider audience. And frankly, it was fun to kind of sit in a meeting and talk about bacon. So, that's pretty much what I have for today. But I think to wrap up, we've come a long way with both our forecasting and our menu. And we've done some great analysis because we've had kind of the data available. And, everyone in our company uses it to drive their decision making.
Well, and who doesn't like bacon? I love this kind of practical application of insights that perhaps wouldn't have been attainable if you were just using an Excel spreadsheet, for instance, to drive your analytics. Thanks, Alex. I have to say, I don't know about the audience, but this is the hungriest I've ever been after a webinar. Everything looks so delicious.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, before we move on to Josh's segment of today's webinar, I have another question for you. And the question is, which analytics tools do you use currently? And we have, I suspect, spreadsheets are going to be a popular answer, but we also have some specifics. For instance, BI tools, event data analytics, and just that good old gut feeling. So, Josh, we're about to come into your segment. Do you have any predictions as to what you think is going to be the number one answer here?
Good question. I would say I think definitely something in the Google Analytics realm. I feel like a lot of people are using that. So I'd definitely say that might be at the top, as well as spreadsheets again.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Alex, what do you think?
I'm sorry, it cut off for a second. Can you repeat that?
Alex, what do you think? What do you think our audience is gonna? What are the top votes going to be on this poll? We have spreadsheets, event data analytics, BI tools, guts, and other.
I mean, spreadsheets worked well for me before. I might just stick with that. Think, ride a winner, right? I have to agree. And now, while our audience is still voting, when we can watch, here's some of the results, but you can still vote, and I will push the updated poll results as they come in. We've got about 40% of the audience voting. But while they're voting, I want to remind you that you're here in a live webinar. You get to talk directly to our two experts through the Q&A panel. So if you have comments or questions, you can post those at any time. I'm going to be asking those during the Q&A portion, which is in the last 10 minutes of the event, and I will answer or ask those of our guests in order that I receive them. So feel free to bump yourself to the head of the queue by asking some questions. We do have a few already in queue right now. So go ahead, and here is our final answer. We had about I would say about half the audience voted here, and spreadsheets, again, were spot on. Josh pretty much nailed the order of, in fact, I think top to bottom, we kind of perfectly predicted how the audience would be voting here. So good insight here. Josh, some things for you to address as we move to your segment. I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, definitely. Great. So I think what I'd like to cover today and really just expand on from what we heard with Alex is this theme of data exploration and discovery within the organization, and really what Looker is all about, which is providing these organizations with the access to the data, the ability to really kind of segment and explore the data, look for trends, look for different characteristics of the data, like how people are purchasing bacon and so forth. So just for today's agenda, we're going to start talking about, again, what Looker is, who's using the platform, so the different types of companies, and what's some of the analysis that they're doing. We'll talk a little bit about our architecture and how that supports this agile environment for forecasting and additional types of analysis, as well as dive in a little bit on EATClub's forecasting pipeline. So what does their setup look like? And then how you can set up Looker for this type of forecasting and analysis, and really to set up the infrastructure that we see in place at EATClub and similar companies. And then finally, at the end, I just wanted to touch on two SQL forecasting models that we've integrated in the past using Looker at different companies, and I can expand on that in the Q&A portion as well. So first, what is Looker? So Looker is a modern data and exploration visualization application. What we mean by that is giving the ability to organizations to connect to their data source. So this is some type of database. EATClub is a MySQL transactional database. We have people connecting to Postgres, Redshift, any type of analytical data store where they have the data in place that's necessary for the types of analysis and forecasting and operations that they like to support. And then the users at the companies are consuming and working with this data in a variety of ways, whether that's exploring dashboards, specific saved reports, scheduling email alerts out to the teams that they're working with, or maybe even external parties, embedding these reports into their own applications or maybe their own internal websites or wikis, and so forth. And really, Looker is involved in helping the forecasting flows at companies, helping get data into the hands of their employees, and really providing a platform for a unified model of the business so that everyone has that opportunity to explore the data. So who's using Looker? Really, we see a lot of different companies from a variety of different industries. We're supporting a lot of e-commerce companies, companies like Gilt, Frank and Oak, Warby Parker, technology companies like Heroku, Pitney Bowes. Let's go back once more. There we go. Companies like Pitney Bowes, Smartling, marketplaces, so people that are transacting online, buying services or inventory from one another, like Blue Apron, Hotel Tonight, some financial services and media and ad tech companies like Yahoo. And really, we're able to support these variety of different industries because Looker itself, the product and the platform, is flexible enough to kind of support any different types of analysis. If you have a database and you have your data in place, really that's all we need to get started. And people are doing forecasting, as we've seen from EATClub, inventory management, call center management. Cohort analysis, lifetime value, really supporting, again, a variety of different organizations within a company in different capacities and different roles, and we'll expand on that in a minute. And so how do we make this possible? This really comes down to our architecture as a very modern approach to business analytics, and the way that we're doing things is really fundamentally different than the way it's been done in the past. We kind of broken this down into 3 phases. The idea behind connect, describing, and exploring your database. So Looker is 100% in database. What we mean by that is that we bring the application to the data source. So we're going to actually bring it to your database where your data resides, whether it's transactional or analytical, and we're going to connect directly to that. And so what this allows for is real-time analysis. If you have a transactional database or you have the data streaming in, this means that with Looker involved in your pipeline, you have up-to-the-minute data. You have access to the entirety of the data set. You haven't rolled up or summarized your data in any way. And then from there, we have this element of describing the data. So providing a IDE, a way to model your data set, to describe the relationships of the data, give your analysts in your organization the ability to curate the types of analysis that can be done, the different dimensions of your business and how those fit together. And then at which point users are interacting with the application. They're exploring the data. It's a web server application, so they're logging in just like they would a website. They have now this entire platform to consume the data, whether it's visualizations in our dashboards, whether it's individual saved looks or queries that are scheduled out again or embedded, and then supporting this really on any device. So having a responsive design, users can consume these dashboards, these reports, wherever they're connected. And then I wanted to just touch on EATClub's data architecture, just to give you a little bit of a detailed explanation of how they're set up. So currently they have a variety of data inputs, whether it's their website or the emails that they're sending out, but these users are interacting with their application, they're viewing the menu items, they're placing the orders, and all this transaction, all these events are being funneled into a database, a MySQL database. So this is a transactional database. And again, what we've done is we've connected Looker to that database. Looker can be cloud-based, it can be hosted on-premise. Again, we don't really care how you're setting it up. And then at which point we have users consuming this data. So we have certain reports or certain dashboards that they're viewing on a daily basis. Maybe they're slicing and dicing the data in different ways. Maybe they're pivoting by whether or not someone is ordering vegetarian, or maybe whether or not there's bacon in the dish. But they're consuming that data. They have access to that. Additionally, Looker is also implemented into the workflows of other systems and other applications. We have a very flexible platform, so we can use a combination of our APIs, of our native integrations with Google spreadsheets or Excel files to basically automate the generation of these reports and put them into place into this forecasting pipeline. So a combination of these knowledge workers and these other applications and these SDKs that support R and some more statistical analysis programs are feeding into this ongoing demand forecasting model that EATClub's using. And so now I'd like to talk through the workflow on getting set up with Looker and any type of forecasting that you'd like to do within the application. So really the most important step is going to come down to having the data. You need to have the data of your business, if it's transactional or operational, that's necessary for forecasting. And so people are kind of doing this, at least I've seen, in two ways, depending on the size and the scale of your business and how much data you're collecting. Some people will have a transactional data store, so they have data that's being collected via the application. That's in real time, and they're connecting Looker to that for real-time analysis, real-time demand forecasting. And then we also see people, as the volume of their data increases, going towards a more powerful MPP database, or maybe something more targeted towards analytical, maybe even historical analysis. Database technologies like Redshift, Vertica, and the like. And the combination of both these transactional real-time analysis as well as historical analysis and access to that data as well really helps power these organizations, both operationally, forecasting-wise, and the data science teams that's looking for deeper and longer-term insights into the data. So after you've connected Looker to your data source, the next step is really the LookML modeling layer. So it's generating this initial model, and then from that, having the model in place, which is providing the relationships between the tables in that database. So if you're an e-commerce site and maybe you're selling orders, there's a relationship between orders and users. Looker is going to find those relationships, and at which point we're also going to create what we call views, and views are the corollary to the tables in the database. These contain the essential logic, the business logic of the revenue on a given order, or how to describe whether or not a particular order is vegetarian or not. So really these are what powers the different types of reports and analysis that you'd like to do within the application. And then from there, the next step is really to start embellishing the model itself. And this is really what powers you to have very specific types of reports created. The LookML, which is what, again, powers this application, it's what defines the core business logic of your business. It's what makes sure that everyone within your organization, whether they're in marketing, whether they're in sales, whether they're on the operations team, that they're operating off of that same unified one source of truth in the business. So we have analysts describing this business logic. It's a reusable model. So once you've described something like the total cost of an order, you can then reference that again throughout the model. You can aggregate with those values. You can create certain custom measures that categorize orders or some facet of your data in a certain way. But it's a very flexible model that can really adapt and evolve over time. So as the needs of your analytics and the organizations evolve, you can continue to update and fine-tune this data model to allow more intricate or new and different nuanced types of analysis within the organization. And then finally, step 4 would be the idea of creating and implementing these reports. So Alex touched on the certain reports that they're looking at as far as order history, or again, the different facets of that order and the way that they're pivoting it. And really that's where you're going to want to create these and start to implement these reports into your workflow. At first, it might be more manual. You might be generating these reports, sending them off to the operations team. Maybe they're manually calling or updating the restaurants. But eventually, you're going to want to drive towards a more automated workflow. But with Looker, what we've done is basically remove that friction, remove the need to run manual SQL queries, put them into an Excel spreadsheet, and do all the manual guesswork and reporting within the spreadsheets. But instead, bringing that application to the database, implementing it into the workflow, and then integrating into other systems, other reporting tools, our API calls via web-based exploration in the dashboards, scheduled email delivery, and the like. So really enabling organizations to collaborate around the data. We know that a lot of the analysis and a lot of what you'd like to do with this data doesn't need to live within the application, so we make it very easy for it to get out and to get into the hands and into the systems that are necessary to run the business. And then finally, it's really the feedback and the iteration process. So nothing is going to be perfect the first time that you do it. There's small updates and adjustments that need to happen along the way. And the agile environment that's provided with an application like Looker is really your ability to iterate and refine this process. Anytime that someone in the organization wants to slice or filter something in a new way, they have that instant access, that instant ability to do that, and you really can hone it in. And in some cases, we actually have seen people doing some forecasting where they've taken the results of this forecasting and they've tunneled it back into their data warehouse for access of Looker. So people that are testing data models, they can actually run the data through these models, take the output of those results, and get them back into the database to compare with the new data that's coming in, so the new transactional data. We've seen that happening as well. But they continue to refine and adjust that process and dial it in for accurate forecasting is an ongoing part of the business. And at the end here, I just want to mention two SQL forecasting models that we've done in the past. These are pretty lightweight. They're actually pretty quick to get implemented. And they do serve as kind of a strong base of how you can kind of manipulate some of the data that you have and really start to get some lightweight forecasting in place. So the first one would be a linear forecasting model. And with this in place, really what this forecasting is happening here is that we're working off a transactional database, and to implement something like this into Looker is basically a three-step process. Looker, the application itself, has a SQL runner within it. This allows us to generate this particular SQL statement, view the result sets within the application, find out the values of each of the coefficients in this particular equation. But more importantly, we can then also implement this type of transformation, this SQL transformation, as what we call a derived table. So I mentioned earlier that Looker operates off views. These views are based off tables in your database. But Looker also provides the flexibility to create new, what we call derived tables. And views based off of derived tables operate just like tables in your actual database, except now you have this kind of flexible environment to describe these transformations, in this case, a linear forecast SQL model, and then also build your reporting and your analysis on top of that. So everything that the Looker application can already do, visualize, explore, run queries, you can run on top of these derivations as well. And so this is actually all happening within the application, but they can also be ported out, or the result sets of these different forecasting and analysis can be ported out of the application. But this is a very lightweight and agile way to implement something like that. And then additionally, a lot of organizations like to see sales projections, or if we're at this point in the month, maybe it's the 15th, maybe it's the 16th, and we've done X amount of orders. What do things possibly look like at the end of the month? How are we doing? And we've also built these into some of the different companies that we've worked with, doing some simple, again, SQL projections based on sales to date, maybe month to date, taking into maybe some levels of seasonality into effect, and also showing people the discrepancy or how far off they are from these lighter weight projections. And again, it's starting with a baseline and then starting to build complexity over time to really start dialing in these projections, maybe feeding them into the data science team so that they have the access to the data and the consistently defined metrics that are going to be important for that projection into the future. And so that's everything that I have for my portion of the piece until we go to the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Josh. And before we get to the Q&A, I have another poll question. So just another one for the audience. What's the most important to your company in regards to business intelligence? The questions are better data discovery for better decision-making, improved forecasting, ability for all departments to use BI to make decisions, dashboards, or other. And in this one, you get to pick exactly one answer. And Josh, what's your prediction on how many, on what is going to be the most popular choice here?
Well, considering it's a forecasting webinar, I think I might go with improved forecasting, but I also think that the ability for all departments to use BI to make decisions. We just know how important it is to get, it's not necessarily about big data or all of the data, but it's about the right data to the right teams at the right time. And really enabling that, I think, is something that a lot of people are starting to look to try to enable within their organizations. So I could see that being maybe a second.
Well said. Our audiences do tend to self-select based on what the webinar content is. So it's a really good insight. Alex, how about you? Any bets on what our audience will vote here?
To keep it interesting, I'll say ability for all departments to use BI to make decisions. So I don't piggyback. I think Josh is probably onto something, but I think that obviously the being able to have data in everybody's hands is important as well. So I'll go with that one.
Nice call. We've got we don't have the whole audience voting. They're still finishing up. So while they are finishing up, I do want to remind our audience that we will be moving next into the Q&A portion of our event. And to participate in the Q&A, just type your question into the text box located below the media player and then click the Submit Question button. Looks like we've got most of our audience who wants to vote has voted. About 43% of the live audience has voted. Actually 45 now. So what do you think? Looks like, Alex, you won this horse race by almost half. Almost half the audience is looking for that ability for BI decisions. And forecasting was kind of a dark horse candidate in this race, it looks like. So sorry, Josh.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, that's what we're here for, though, right? Now, maybe you've solved all their questions. So now, before we move into the Q&A event, I do want to remind everybody that I've got quite a few questions in the queue, but doesn't mean you can't ask a question. So go ahead and ask your question. We can respond to them after the webinar if we run out of time. So first, we have a question from Nick. Nick has a question for Alex specifically, but we'll ask Josh too. What are the varying degrees of interaction with Looker within your team?
Yeah, absolutely. So I touched on this a little bit in one of my slides, but it's really true that everyone on our team uses Looker to some extent. On any given day, 50% of our company runs a look at least once. Certain departments are obviously kind of take to it more quickly. Obviously for those forecasting people that I mentioned, we kind of purposely hired quants to do that job, so they take to it quickly. Other people, they might need a little bit more of an intro up front. But once they kind of understand how to articulate a question in English, and then translate that into a look, we find that some of our power users come from not traditionally quantitative departments. So, for example, our member services people are power users of Looker. So really, we find that the level of interaction is very high.
And Josh, do you have anything to add to that? Coming from Looker?
Yeah, definitely. Really just kind of as a more holistic view, we've really seen, depending on the type of organization and the type of data that's in place within the database, Looker can really support, more of this standard reporting and just lightweight dashboarding. But we've seen people implement Looker in a way that almost supports like back office tools. So we have certain companies where they might want to support knowledge workers with the ability to very quickly identify key users or key transactions in their database. And Looker provides this lightweight flexibility to really kind of build these, I like to describe them as mini data applications. But you can envision sort of like a lightweight back office tool that someone can go in and maybe search for all of the users that satisfy this condition or so forth. So it really depends on how deep you want to bake Looker into the operational workflow of your business, or if you're using it more of just running analysis, or some people are just purely using the APIs to model the data and then get it out into other systems and into their own applications via embedded iframes or those API calls. So a lot of flexibility, and it really just depends on what you're looking to do with the data that you have.
Excellent. Thanks, Josh. Now, I have kind of two audience questions that have pretty much asked the same question for Alex. And David asked, what was your second choice system when you chose Looker, and why did you choose Looker in preference? And then also, Rob asked, what other BI tools did you consider other than Looker, and why did you choose Looker other than those BI tools? So two pretty much identical questions. Alex, what do you have? Give us the dish.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can tell definitely more about our experience selecting. I'm sure Josh can give some more insights as to what the market looks like. But for us, we implemented Looker, I guess, practically about 2 years ago, I believe. So at the time, I think the options were relatively limited. Our main alternative was to implement an in-house kind of tool. And, up against an in-house tool, it just felt like, basically we could create something with limited engineering resources on our side, as well as something that you don't really need to have a technical understanding to access and use. So for us, it was kind of the choice between, do we piece together something homegrown or do we bring in Looker?
Excellent point. Thank you, Alex, and thank you, David and Rob, for those questions. Now we have another question from Ali. Ali asks, can you give us some examples of surprisingly helpful looks? I'm looking for Looker inspiration, so can you help out Ali with some inspiration? Alex or Josh, which one of you would like to take this first?
I'm happy to take this. It's Alex. So hopefully you find this inspirational. We have actually found that doing some text analysis and text mining of our reviews is a really quick way to gain insights about specific dishes. So, for example, if we're trying to figure out if, a Thai curry is too spicy, we would mine all of those reviews very quickly for certain keywords like spicy, hot, combinations of words, too spicy, tear up. And we would be able to quickly kind of pinpoint what's going on with that dish and then make adjustments so that we can really, we really have that advantage that in real time we can tune our offerings. The next time that Indian curry is available to customers, we will have, either communicated with our restaurant partner or adjusted our internal production so that it better fits customer preferences. So that's really kind of an advantage that we have, over a traditional restaurant, a traditional caterer. And, it was a little bit of a surprising application of Looker because, you always think about kind of modeling, but you can really use it for kind of text analysis and text mining as well.
Excellent points. Thank you so much. Josh, any other insight?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the first things that we really start to do when we work with different companies, particularly those that are in e-commerce and maybe marketplaces, is we try to determine which users are the most engaged, it's all about engagement and retention of users. So when I start working with different companies, some of the initial looks or reports that I'm looking for are identifying the users that are most engaged, who's ordering the most, who continues to come back and for EATClub, who are those really loyal customers. And then I also try to look at, are there any particular items or particular experiences that cause people not to return to us? So sometimes, again, I don't know, I think, Ali, if you're using Looker, what I like to do is I basically like to look at maybe if it's whatever transaction, if it's an order, or if it's something they purchased, I'll group by that, and then I'll basically compare that to how often people are then returning and booking again after that. So are they booking again, or are they ordering again after that first experience, and really trying to hone in on which things are potentially poisoning the well, causing that bad first-time experience, and also which things are causing people to become really loyal customers. And so, separating and cohorting your users based on who's most engaged, and then just start slicing that by a lot of different facets of your business, and you'd be surprised at some of the things that you can discover. And that's something that's pretty straightforward to get set up.
Excellent point. Thank you so much. And thank you, Ali, for that great question. Now, we have a question that's a little off of EATClub situation, but maybe not. John asks, we are looking to analyze both social analytics, social posting in one platform. Can you recommend anything? We're currently using Hootsuite, but we would like a more in-depth analysis. Alex and Josh, I'm going to throw this one out to whoever would like to take that one first.
I can speak to that. Really, again, what you're going to want to do here, and what we see a lot of companies that want to start looking at this social data, whether it's the tweets or the engagement on Facebook or any of these kind of different technologies, is you need to have that unified view of the social analytics in conjunction with whatever's powering your business, with whatever transactions are occurring. And so what we see people moving towards is basically a process of pulling all that data into a centralized data warehouse, and then connecting some type of exploration or some type of application to that. So pulling the data together into like one of those analytical data stores, like a Redshift or something like that, and then starting to explore that. But really, if you want to get the very in-depth analysis, it's a matter of collecting the data, so having access to it, ETLing it or pulling it into a data warehouse, and then starting to do the exploration and the querying on top of that. And that's where something like Looker or similar business intelligence tool can come into play.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And Alex, do you have anything else to add?
No, we haven't really explored that as much. So, yeah, I definitely defer to Josh on that one.
Okay, excellent. And thank you, John, for that question. That was really good insight from our experts. Now, I think this might win my favorite question that's been asked in all of Q&A today. This is from Kevin. He said, how do you guys think about the difference between business intelligence and data scientists? Sounds like you wear a few different hats in that you're responsible for reporting on the past, but also creating models to enhance conversion of the future. So, excellent question, Kevin. Alex, do you want to get started?
Sure. I mean, I think that the way that I tend to think about it is, especially when you're kind of at an early stage startup, you definitely do wear a lot of different hats, and you're kind of when you're kind of in a founding business intelligence, data science, when you're the first member of that team at a company, you kind of have to play both roles. So, yeah, I mean, I just kind of think, at a larger company, you kind of have the resources and the luxury to be able to separate out those two teams. But for us, it's really just about solving the data challenges that we have.
Excellent point. Thank you. Josh, anything else to add?
Yeah, definitely. So I really think about, if you're reporting on the past, it's only helpful if it's helping to inform the future. So when it comes to business intelligence, I kind of view that as giving the organization some way to find data to inform future decisions, whether that future decision is about to happen that second or within the next couple of days or long into the future. Whereas I think data science, and again, there's definitely crossovers between the two, and this is kind of really my own anecdotal idea. But really, I think data science is taking statistical methods on top of data sets, really tried and true practices, maybe a more academic approach to the way that you're using larger sets of data or starting to implement these forecasting. So, business intelligence is getting people the data they need to, whether it's some small facet of the data from the past to inform a future decision. And data science is really building the automated systems in place to start forecasting out or basically auto-generating those future decisions.
Well said. Thank you, Josh. And unfortunately, we are at the end of our webinar time. Now, my thank you for everybody who has asked questions. My apologies to the 16 people whose questions we still have in queue. Those questions will be answered by Looker, either by email or in a future blog post. So please watch for that as well. And thank you to everybody who was participating in our webinar today, both our esteemed speakers, Alex Levy and Josh Moskowitz, as well as our attendees who are in the audience and in future on-demand audiences. Today's webcast, Rising Dough, How EATClub is Using Analytics to Grow Their Business, was brought to you by VentureBeat and Looker. This webcast is copyright 2014 by VentureBeat. The presentation materials are owned by or copyrighted, if that is the case, by VentureBeat, EATClub, and Looker, who are solely responsible for its content, and the individual speakers are solely responsible for their content and their opinions. On behalf of our guests, Alex Levy and Josh Moskowitz, I'm Wendy Schuchert. Thanks for your time, and have a great day.